Welcome to MSL Stories. Friends, if you don't mind, please subscribe to my channel. I have a dream of 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Let's start the story. My name is Mark Lawson, and I'm a 42-year-old project manager for a mid-sized tech company in the Midwest. I've spent the last 20 years building what I thought was a rock-solid life. A loving marriage with my wife, Laura, 39, and raising our son, Jake, who just turned 19 and recently started college. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors who wave every morning. To the outside world, we were the quintessential American family. Laura and I met in our 20s. She had a spark, an energy that was contagious, and I fell for her instantly. Our early years together were blissful. Trips to the beach, shared dreams, and the excitement of raising Jake. I worked long hours to provide for our family, while Laura handled the household, often reminding me how much she sacrificed for us. I believed her. I trusted her. Everything changed one afternoon. Jake came home unexpectedly early from college, his face pale and his voice shaking. He pulled me into the living room, glancing nervously at the stairs to make sure we were alone. "Dad," he started, his voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you something. I wasn't supposed to be here today, but I caught Mom with someone." The words hung in the air, and for a moment my mind refused to process them. "With someone?" I echoed, my heart pounding. Jake nodded, his jaw tight. "Some guy. They were in the bedroom. I didn't know what to do, so I left before they saw me." My first instinct was disbelief, not Laura. Not the woman I'd shared my life with. But the look in Jake's eyes told me he wasn't lying. I trusted my son, maybe even more than I trusted myself at that moment. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Yes, Dad," he replied firmly. I wouldn't say this if I wasn't. The conversation left me reeling. A part of me wanted to confront Laura immediately, but I held back. If what Jake said was true, I needed more than just accusations. I needed proof. "Let's figure this out together," I told Jake. Over the next few days, we worked in secret. I ordered a set of discreet hidden cameras online, ensuring they would blend seamlessly into the house. We installed them in common areas, including the bedroom. It felt invasive, but I had to know the truth. Jake was my rock through the entire process. I could see the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior, but he focused his energy on helping me. We didn't talk much about what would happen if we found what we were looking for. Neither of us wanted to think that far ahead. The house felt colder in the following days. Every smile Laura gave me, every casual conversation, felt like a cruel lie. I started noticing little details I had ignored before: her frequent errands, the texts she claimed were from friends, the late-night phone calls she'd take in another room. Each one felt like a dagger in my chest, twisting deeper with every suspicion. A week later, I sat down with Jake to review the footage. What we saw confirmed everything. It wasn't just one time, or one mistake. Laura had been seeing another man, a coworker named Richard, for months. Watching the video felt like a punch to the gut. "I knew it," Jake muttered under his breath, his fists clenched. I turned off the laptop and sat in silence for a moment. My heart was racing, but my mind was surprisingly clear. "This isn't just about her anymore," I said. "This is about what we do next." Jake nodded. "We're not letting her get away with this." And just like that, the groundwork for everything to come was laid. The evening I decided to confront Laura, the house felt eerily quiet. Jake had gone back to his dorm for a few days, giving me the space I needed to handle the situation. I wasn't nervous. Not exactly. There was a clarity in my mind that I hadn't felt in years, a determination that this time, I wasn't going to let emotions cloud my judgment. Laura walked through the door just after 7 p.m., carrying a grocery bag and scrolling through her phone. She smiled at me, the same smile I had fallen for years ago, but tonight, it felt hollow. "We need to talk," I said, my voice even. She paused mid-step, her smile faltering. "Sure. What's up?" I gestured toward the living room where I had set up my laptop on the coffee table. The air between us felt heavy as she sat down, placing the grocery bag on the floor. "I know about you and Richard," I said simply, watching her face. For a moment, she froze. Then came the denial. "What are you talking about?" I opened the laptop and played the footage. The color drained from her face as the video showed her and Richard together, laughing, touching, and more. She didn't bother denying it further. Instead, her expression shifted to anger. "You've been spying on me?" she snapped, her voice sharp. "You've been lying to me," I shot back, my tone still calm. "And to Jake." That mention of our son seemed to strike a nerve. Her expression softened slightly. but I wasn't interested in her excuses. "Don't make this about Jake," she said, her voice quieter now. "This is between us. You've been so distant, so busy with work. I needed someone who actually paid attention to me." I almost laughed at the absurdity of her attempt to shift the blame. "You needed attention, so you destroyed our family?" She folded her arms, her confidence unraveling. "What do you want from me, Mark? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry, but people make mistakes." "This isn't a mistake, Laura. It's a pattern," I interrupted, my voice firm. "And it's over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon." The look on her face was one of pure disbelief. She had expected me to yell, to cry, to beg for answers. What she didn't expect was my complete detachment. "You're divorcing me?" she asked, her voice trembling for the first time. "Of course I am," I said, standing up, "and you won't be getting a dime more than you deserve. Don't expect any sympathy from Jake either. He knows everything." Her face crumbled at that. "Jake knows?" "Yes," I replied. "He saw you first. He's the one who told me. You didn't just betray me, Laura. You betrayed him too." The conversation ended there. Laura retreated upstairs, slamming the door behind her. I sat in the living room for hours, replaying the events in my mind. There was no satisfaction in her humiliation, no catharsis. This was only the beginning. The next day, I called my lawyer to finalize the paperwork. Laura had no idea what was coming. What she didn't know was that I had made sure her infidelity would be documented in every aspect of the divorce proceedings. In our state, that mattered. As for Richard, I had other plans for him. Richard Tanner, Laura's co-worker, was a smooth-talking sales executive at a marketing firm. He had a reputation for being a charmer, but what most people didn't know was his trail of broken relationships and shady business practices. I didn't care about him personally, at least not at first, but as I dug deeper, I realized that bringing him down wasn't just about revenge. It was about ensuring people like him faced consequences. The first step was to gather information. With the help of a private investigator, I learned that Richard was married to a woman named Evelyn, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney with a thriving career. From what I could tell, she had no idea what her husband was up to. I also discovered that Richard had been skimming money from his company's accounts to fund his lavish lifestyle. The plan came together piece by piece, like a puzzle. It wasn't rushed or emotional, it was deliberate. Every move I made had a purpose. Step 1. Informing Evelyn I knew Evelyn deserved to know the truth. One afternoon, I mailed her an anonymous package containing photos and video evidence of Richard's affair with Laura. The package included a note that simply read, "You deserve better than this. Use this information as you see fit." 2 days later, I got confirmation that she'd received it. Through a mutual connection of the private investigator, I heard she had already confronted Richard and was preparing to file for divorce. One piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Step 2. Richard's professional downfall. Richard's employer prided itself on integrity, which made it easy to expose his misconduct. Using the same private investigator, I compiled evidence of Richard's embezzlement. Anonymous tips were sent to both the company's HR department and their legal team. Within weeks, Richard was under internal investigation. When the full extent of his theft came to light, he was fired on the spot and threatened with legal action. Step 3. Laura's reality check. While Richard's life crumbled, Laura began to feel the fallout of her choices. She tried to call me several times, leaving voicemails alternating between apologies and anger. I didn't respond. In the divorce proceedings, my lawyer presented the footage as evidence of infidelity, ensuring Laura received the bare minimum. Our prenuptial agreement, which I had insisted on years ago, shielded most of my assets. She walked away with little more than her personal savings. To make matters worse for her, Evelyn, furious at both Richard and Laura, sent a scathing email to Laura's boss. Although it didn't lead to Laura's dismissal, it certainly tarnished her reputation at work. Whispers about her personal life began to circulate, and she found herself increasingly isolated. Step 4. A new chapter. Jake and I moved forward together. I encouraged him to focus on his studies and not let his mother's actions define him. At the same time, I began to rebuild my own life. I sold the house, too many memories there, and moved into a smaller, modern home closer to the city. One day, as I was organizing my new office, Jake came to me with a smile. "You did it, Dad," he said simply. "What do you mean?" I asked, looking up. "You didn't just let it slide. You made sure they couldn't just walk away like nothing happened. That takes guts." I didn't know what to say. Instead, I just nodded. Richard's final blow. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Richard had filed for bankruptcy. Evelyn had taken him for everything he was worth in the divorce, and his former company had pressed charges for his financial crimes. As for Laura, she was renting a small apartment on the other side of town, working long hours to make ends meet. She reached out once, asking if we could talk, but I declined. There was nothing left to say. The months following the divorce brought a strange sense of clarity. Life wasn't easy. I'd been betrayed by someone I trusted completely, and rebuilding wasn't just about moving houses or changing routines. It was about letting go of the anger that threatened to consume me. Jake, thankfully, was my anchor through it all. One evening, as we sat on the back porch of our new home, he opened up about his feelings. "Dad, do you think Mom even regrets what she did?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with bitterness. I took a moment to think. Maybe she does, but regret doesn't undo the damage, and it's not our job to wait around for her to realize what she's lost. Jake nodded, his jaw tightening. "I'm glad you didn't let her get away with it. It feels like justice. Justice." That word stuck with me. Everything I'd done had been about ensuring that the people who caused harm were held accountable. But I realized I also needed to focus on what was next for me, for us. Laura's fallout. Laura had lost almost everything. Her relationship with Jake was strained beyond repair. He avoided her calls and only saw her on rare occasions, more out of obligation than anything else. Her career was stagnant, and the whispers about her personal life had made her a pariah among her colleagues. One day she showed up at the house unannounced. Jake was out and I wasn't expecting company, so I was surprised when I opened the door and saw her standing there. She looked tired, older than her 39 years. I need to talk," she said, her voice quiet. I let her in, but only as far as the entryway. She glanced around, taking in the unfamiliar decor of the new house. "You've moved on," she said, more to herself than to me. "I have," I replied simply. "What do you want, Laura?" Her eyes welled up with tears. "I made a mistake, Mark. I was selfish and I hurt you and Jake. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." Her apology didn't move me. It felt more like an attempt to ease her own guilt than to make amends. "I appreciate you saying that," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "But it doesn't change anything. We're done, Laura. You made your choices, and now you're living with the consequences. I've moved on, and so has Jake. I suggest you do the same." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "I hope one day Jake will talk to me again." "That's up to him," I said, holding the door open for her to leave. As she walked away, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just relief. Richard's final ruin. Richard's life had gone from bad to worse. Evelyn had taken him to court, where the judge ruled in her favor for alimony and damages. His former company's lawsuit left him with a hefty debt, and his name was blacklisted in the industry. The last I heard, he was working odd jobs to stay afloat. It was fitting, I thought. People like him thrived on manipulation and deceit, but eventually their actions caught up with them. A new chapter. Over time, life started to feel normal again. Jake excelled at college, and we grew closer than ever. Our shared experience had forged a bond that couldn't be broken. For me, moving on meant exploring new possibilities. I joined a hiking group, started painting, something I hadn't done since my 20s, and even began dating again. One woman in particular, Karen, caught my attention. She was kind, intelligent, and had a way of making me laugh that I hadn't experienced in years. On one of our dates, she asked me about my past. I told her the truth, sparing the painful details but making it clear I wasn't bitter anymore. "You've been through a lot," she said, squeezing my hand, "but it sounds like you've come out stronger." I smiled. "I think I have." The final scene 1. Sunny afternoon. Jake and I stood in the backyard, setting up a grill for a small gathering. Karen was inside, chatting with some of my friends. Life felt full again, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back. As Jake handed me a pair of tongs, he said, "You know, Dad, this is how it should have been all along, just us, surrounded by people who actually care." I nodded, placing a steak on the grill. "You're right, Jake. And this time, we're going to make it count." The past was behind us, and the future was ours to shape. A year passed, and the remnants of the life I once shared with Laura became nothing more than faint memories. Jake was thriving in college, full of confidence and purpose. Our bond grew stronger every day, built not just on shared pain but on trust and mutual respect. Laura had reached out a few more times, mostly through letters. I didn't respond. Jake occasionally mentioned that she was trying to repair her relationship with him, but he wasn't ready to let her back into his life. "She'll have to prove she's changed," he told me once, "and that's on her, not me." Richard, as far as I knew, had vanished from the social circles we once brushed against. The last tidbit I heard about him was that he'd left town entirely, likely trying to escape the mess he'd made of his life. Evelyn, on the other hand, had become something of a local hero for her swift and decisive handling of their divorce. She and I never spoke directly, but I occasionally saw her name in the news, usually tied to a successful legal case or a charity event. As for me, life continued to surprise me in the best ways. Karen became an increasingly important part of my world. Her warmth and steady presence made me realize what I'd been missing all those years: a partner who valued honesty and partnership over ego and drama. One evening, after a quiet dinner at home, Karen and I sat on the couch sipping tea and watching the sunset through the large windows of my new house. "You seem lighter these days," she said, her voice soft. "I feel lighter," I replied. "Letting go of the past, it's the best thing I've ever done." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "It suits you." The final note: life doesn't always give us closure in neat, tidy packages. But sometimes you have to create your own, by facing the truth, taking decisive action, and refusing to let betrayal define you. The life I have now isn't what I imagined when I first said my vows to Laura, but in many ways, it's better. It's real, honest, and filled with people who truly care. The past may have shaped me, but it doesn't own me anymore. And that, I think, is the sweetest revenge of all. Thank you, friends.